starting in chapter 20, commandments of God. If you remember, the people of Israel don't know anything about God or even His will. What they know only is about His promise to Abraham, His promise to Isaac, His promise to Jacob, and even to Joseph. So there's a lot of things that this nation should put in their lives, in their system, so that they will function as a good nation, some a nation that will represent God. So God put an order to them. If you remember in Exodus chapter uh, 20, wherein here the word of God given to Moses, it says, these are the rules that you shall set before them. So God has laid upon the people of Israel rules, uh, commandments. Not only the in chapter 20 where you have like the top 10 commandments that was given at that time, but the book of Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers have a lot of commandments. In fact, there are a count of 603 commandments. And it's all the purpose of setting the nation of Israel to be in order. Well, we have a God of order and decency. So he said rules that you set before them. So there were rules about laws about servants. We could see how the servant should be treated and what will be the relationship between the employer and the servant. Servants are not slaves. They are people who were employed. So they are given their due benefits, servants. There's also a rule about capital crimes. Okay, uh, there's there's a rule that will an application of the sixth commandment: "Thou shalt not kill." So if a person murder a fellow human being, it's a direct attack to the image of God, because God created man according to his image. So if a person is found guilty with a testimony of two or three, okay, so that murder will be sentenced for death also, okay? So there's capital crimes. There's a distinction between a premeditated murder and an accidental manslaughter, okay? And if it's accidentally, that person could go to the altar of God for safety. When they went to Israel and the inheritance was divided amongst the tribes, they are designated. There are designated city of refuge where an accidental manslayer could flee for refuge. There are 6 cities that was named in Numbers 35, Deuteronomy 19, and Joshua 20. So there's no police then at that time. Families are responsible to bring justice, but sometimes because of anger, loss of a family, so it could lead to revenge instead of a justice. So the law stepped in to protect accused until he was proven guilty. Children and parents, there's a tendency where children will be disobedient to parents, as well as parents to be maltreating their children. So the fifth commandment, that there should not be mistreatment. Okay, so man's mistreatment of his parents or abusing them, or that's something that even in the old time, in the ancient time, shows that children have no respect for their parents. Usually have no respect even for any authority that could tantamount to it when they don't respect their parents. Paul even describe this kind of behavior of children without natural affection. In the last days, these were the kind of people They don't have affection. Another thing that was discussed also in Exodus chapter 21 is kidnapping. Okay, so stealing properties is wrong. So a greater crime when people steal other people. Remember, people are made according to the image of God, and some reason why they steal people is that they sell them to slavery. It's big money then, and it's easy money because you steal somebody, overpower them, and just sell them to the slave market. All right. Also injuries. There's argument, and God knows that there will be arguments among Israel. They are hot-headed. They love to argue. Naturally, man has a tendency to argue, to present their case, to present their grievances, and to the point of they could hurt each other. Okay, so sometimes the aggressor, the aggressive type of person could overpower the other to the point of death. So the aggressor will pay for with his life. Okay, but if it's the person did not die, so he'll be cleared of the charges, but there will be a reimbursement of the victim's time that was lost from work, and medical expenses also. If you remember, this is like daños or restitutional pay that the court will put or in place if somebody injured someone, so that it will cover the loss of time and work, even the medical expenses. Also tackled was slaves. Okay, we learned that there are slaves. The Lord doesn't want slaves. Okay, remember, humans are in the image of God and deserve to be with rights. God gave rights to men. I mean, God has given men the freedom to decide, the freedom to choose the kind of life. He present a life to them. He lead them to a life. It's up to men to follow that kind of life. There's freedom of choice, right? When it's okay that there's slaves because of their culture and their time, there were slaves. So the slaves should not be treated or will not be abused. Okay, uh, they they could punish their slaves, but it should not be the point of even killing them, which is in a lot of reported incidents that happen, that the owner of the slaves intently to kill their slaves when they uh, run away or were not a part of the work. Okay, uh, that was the case. Also, injuries with a pregnant woman. If you remember, if the child dies, so the life will be claimed. But if it's just injury, then the guilty man will be fined. Okay, there will be indemnification of the damage or the injury that was caused. Okay, so uh, that was taught here. Now, in what we are bringing today is about animals. Okay, about properties and then possessions. We talk about injured by an animal, gored by an animal, so the animal will be stoned. Okay, uh, the owner will be liable, right? And the if a gore if an ox gore a slave, the owner shall give to the master 30 shekels of silver, and ox shall be stoned. See, there's always protection for men. God is looking at the rights and the safety of men. In chapter 21, verse 33, Here's a rule or command with regards to properties that could be damaged. Okay. For example, if a man digs a pit, does not cover it, and then an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restoration or restitution. The owner will give money. The man who dug the pit, who owns the pit or own the land, okay, will give money or daños, they call it in Tagalog, okay, daños. They pay restitution to the owner of the animal, okay, and will give money to the owner, and the dead beast will be given to the one who had the pit, okay. If the animal uh, gore another animal and it dies, so they will sell that animal that is alive and share the price, and that dead animal that was gored, okay, or bought, called, they will share. They will chop it and they will share it. Uh, or if the ox has been reportedly been doing it, goring several times, and the owner failed to keep the animal from hurting other animals, so uh, they the owner of the ox will repay for the ox and take the dead carcass of the ox. Okay, that's animals that injured. If any man steals an ox, sheep, and kills it or sell it, he should repay 5 oxen. So if you steal one, you will repay 5 oxen. He'll steal one sheep. He will repay 4 sheep. If a thief is found red-handed breaking in and struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood dealt for him. So if he was caught red-handed and there's an altercation, or the owner together with his servants bit up the thief, there's no blood guilt. There's no accountability with the one who owns the property, and the person trespasses to the property for the intent of stealing. Okay. Um, but if the son has risen on him, there shall be blood guilt for him. He'll surely pay. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. Okay, he shall be sold as slaves. Uh, if a stolen beast is found alive in his possession, it's carrying it, he shall pay double. Okay, so verse 5: if a man causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed over and let his beast loose, and it feeds another man's field, he shall make restitution from the beast in his own field, his own vineyard. There's a tendency where they cut loose their animals, and the animals goes to the other side of the property, the neighbor's property, and eat up the plants, the vegetation, the vineyard, the field, and so the owner of the animal will pay or make restitution, uh, whatever was the cause of the damage. As we can see here, that God is he is teaching men here to be responsible, to be accountable of every action. To you remember in Matthew 5, even in Deuteronomy 24, it says tooth for tooth. Okay, uh, so it's showing that whatever damage or whatever hurt or whatever because there should be a remuneration, a payment, indemnification of it. Uh, see, God is a God of righteousness and a God of judgment. He's a judge, and he's teaching men here, his people here, to realize there's property that he has provided, and they should be accountable and be responsible, especially with animals, that it will not hurt others, or even the relationship amongst them, how they treat their animals and the animals of other Israelites. So only shows that man without rules has a tendency of chaos, a tendency of conflict, a tendency of rift, and could cause injury or damage if it escalate more, and even cost of life. God see it already in the people of Israel, how they behave like that. Been living in Brooklyn, where there are more Jewish people who live there than Israel. Millions of them live there than Israel. You can see their behavior. Their they are aloof from each other. There's a difference or indifference between each other, and that's very common among them. Even though they belong to the same nation, a Jewish nation, but they have different families, different within that Judaism or Judah family or tribe, but still they're different families. So in fact, they have different synagogue where they go and worship every Friday evening and Saturday whole day. Sometimes a whole block will have one or two or perhaps three synagogue. They are only allowed to travel a half day's journey away from the synagogue during Friday or Saturday. They have to be in their synagogue, okay, or their house of worship or house of prayer. So they have indifferences amongst them, within them, between them. These are the kind of people that God has been so favorable. A lot of rich people here in America are Jewish descent or Jewish descent, billionaires, yet they don't agree on each other. There's some of animosity, like families, difference of families. So God brought order to the nation of Israel. Well, Jewish nation is only one tribe, Judah tribe. Well, Benjamin tribe also. They joined because they were the ones who stayed loyal to God. But the rest of the Israelites, could you imagine how they are when they face each other, interact with each other? There's indifferences. There's animosity between. Same thing with every human being in this world. There's always like, this is mine, yours is yours, sometimes yours is mine. Right? There's covetousness among men, and because of that desire to have more, it causes problems and damages. And if we are not also responsible what we have, like animals, it could lead to some disaster. So God brought order, brought rules so that these Israelites could follow and will guide them in how they interact, how their properties interact with other properties, how they will live their lives that will not cause uh, damages for each other to each other, and will not mislead or cause some problems and conflicts with owners, neighbors, friends, and even families. Sometimes families could severely fight each other because of property, animals, properties, right? And even when an animal go to their brother or their sister's property, that will be a big issue. So God is bringing up every behavior that could possibly happen or had happened in the past, and God is bringing order to their nation because God has found favor to this nation, to this Jewish Israelites, and He knows that they're rough and raw, and they are sometimes ridiculous in how they live their lives. So God see it, and God put order in our lives. Uh, we live sometimes without law, or sometimes we go over the law, go over some rules. We're not accountable of what things that we own or possess. Sometimes, if there are things that comes to our property and we take it, that's ours, even though it came from the neighbor. For example, there are fruits or vegetables hanging on the fence, and they take it. And well, understandable in this nation or in this society. They said if it goes to your property, you have that demarcation line, and whatever goes into your property, that's yours. But it still came from the tree of the neighbor. So there should be order, otherwise it chaos will be experienced by everyone. Okay, so praise be to God that He gave order, He gave rule, and from these rules, from these teachings, a lot of constitutions, a lot of law of the land were taken from here. They follow because this is morally right. It leads to the righteous God. It leads to a better and clear and transparent way of interacting, how to deal with problems, with these scenarios or cases. God has given every point and every details of problems amongst the Israelites. Answer it to bring order, to bring balance, because God is a God of order. In our lives, if we don't follow the law of God, if we don't become responsible, following the law of God, responsible what God has entrusted to us, then there will be disorder. It will cause to harm and injury. There'll be heartache, problems. God has entrusted us a lot of things in our life. Let us be responsible. Let's be careful and understand that God has set already moral law, okay, relational law, criminal law, okay, in this modern day and time. God has institutionalized law to man, because man should be guided of how we will live our lives. Okay, and that speaks greatly of our God. He's an all-knowing God. He sets rules, and he calls men to be responsible. And if there's a problem, to be accountable, right? Be accountable of whatever damages or whatever problems or issues is there. We'll not just close our eyes, uh, or will not just tolerate lenient of the wrongdoings, but rather there's accountability. Same with our lives. Are we accountable of our actions? Are we accountable of our behavior, especially with our neighbors, especially with our families, with regards to our property, with regards to our possession? Very existing problem amongst us, amongst you, families or friends or neighbors. It's very common, right? Listen, God is teaching us. God has set already a moral law. Follow after the righteousness of God, and we will not have our enemy will attack us in every sides. But if we follow the righteousness of God, we will just trust Him to deliver us in every situations that would happen to us. Maybe some accidents, or maybe some of our possessions, like animals. We have pet, okay, and goes to the neighbor and start to create some, bite a neighbor. So let's just be accountable to it and try to uh, restitute or restore the relationship. That's the important thing. You can see God is preserving relationship amongst them, and the only way to preserve the relationship amongst them or each other is to realize there's a responsibility for their own properties or possessions, and accountability if things happen. Okay, we need to be accountable. So I hope that will help us to see that our God is a God of order, a God of decency, a God who is who brought moral righteousness to men. So the moral law came from God, and man will not have moral law. Man will have that morality without God bringing the morality or the moral law. So if they say there's no God, there's a moral law. It will not come from any like microorganism or any say that said it evolved or something. No, God has said it, and it's true and it's clear of His righteousness. And for us as people of God, let's follow. Let's rejoice. And our God is who cares for us and cares for each and every one of us. Right? So I hope that we'll be responsible for the blessings, the properties that God has given us. Be accountable if things happen, incidents could happen. We have a righteous God and holy. So again, thank you for joining us. If you have questions, please feel free to ask Brother Al, Lailani, Manong Nards will be able to take note, and even Simon can take note on it. We'll try to answer it. We have a chance on Monday as we will continue on with the more of the teachings about the moral law of God to teach man how we should behave amongst our family, amongst people around us. Okay, people of right. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Wilmyr, for word. You have any questions?
Bernas, something's wrong with your mic.
Thank you, Pastor Wilmyr. Do you hear me?
Only a little.
Okay, thank you, Pastor, for sharing your thoughts. If there is question, maybe Pastor Wilmyr